You felt it, that impossible moment when the universe seems to lean in and whisper directly to you. A name spoken by a stranger seconds after it crossed your mind. A book falling open to the exact passage you needed. A series of events so improbable, so perfectly timed, they defy all rational explanation. You dismiss it as coincidence, a fluke, a trick of the mind because that's what you've been taught. But a deeper part of you, the part that still remembers a more ancient, connected way of being, knows there's something more. This isn't about wishful thinking or magical nonsense. This is about synchronicity explained, Carl Jung's science of meaningful coincidences. And by the end of this journey, you won't just understand it. You'll start to see how these meaningful alignments are not random noise, but potent signals from the very fabric of reality, guiding you, challenging you, and ultimately shaping your destiny if you have the courage to listen. We're not here to dabble in feel-good platitudes. We're here to dissect a profound psychological, and dare I say, metaphysical concept pioneered by one of the greatest minds of the 20th century, Carl Gustav Jung. This is about equipping you with the understanding to recognize these powerful currents in your own life, to stop being a passive recipient of chance, and start becoming an active co-creator with a universe that is far more intelligent and responsive than you've been led to believe. This is about understanding the architecture of meaning itself. So prepare to have your perception of reality fundamentally challenged, because what Jung uncovered wasn't just a quaint idea. It was a glimpse into the operational principles of a connected cosmos, where your inner world and the outer world are in constant dynamic dialogue. And learning the language of that dialogue, that's a source of power most will never tap. First, let's get one thing brutally clear. Synchronicity is not just any coincidence. The world is awash with coincidences. You think of an old friend and they call the next day. Statistically, with enough friends and enough days, that's bound to happen. Jung wasn't interested in the mundane. He was interested in meaningful coincidences. The term synchronicity was coined by him to describe events that are connected not by a direct chain of cause and effect, but by their shared meaning, their significance to the individual experiencing them, and their uncanny timing. It's an acausal connecting principle, as he put it. This means there's no discernible physical mechanism making one event lead to the other in a linear, A causes B fashion. Instead, two or more events occur in such a way that their juxtaposition illuminates something profound for the observer, reflecting an underlying pattern or archetype. It's the universe winking at you, confirming an inner state with an outer event or vice versa. Think of it as a bridge between your internal psychological reality and the external physical world, a bridge built not of logic but of significance. It's when your inner landscape suddenly and often startlingly finds its echo in the external world. This isn't about superstition. It's about recognizing patterns of meaning that science, in its current materialistic form, often struggles to explain because it's looking for a different kind of causality. To truly grasp synchronicity, you must understand the titan who birthed the concept, Carl Jung. This wasn't some mystical guru. He was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, initially a protege of Sigmund Freud. But Jung was too much of an intellectual maverick to remain in anyone's shadow. Where Freud saw the unconscious primarily as a repository of repressed sexual desires, Jung envisioned something far vaster, far more ancient, the collective unconscious. This, for Jung, was a layer of the psyche shared by all humanity, a reservoir of ancestral memories, instincts, and universal patterns he called archetypes, primordial images like the hero, the shadow, the wise old man, the great mother. These archetypes, Jung believed, are the building blocks of our myths, our dreams, our religions, and yes, our synchronistic experiences. His break from Freud was in part due to his insistence on exploring these deeper, more numinous realms of the human experience, realms that Freud, with his more mechanistic view, often dismissed. Jung wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty with the messy, irrational, and often terrifying contents of the deep psyche. He studied alchemy, mythology, world religions, and esoteric traditions, not as quaint historical curiosities, but as maps of the human soul. It was from this rich, deep soil of psychological exploration that the concept of synchronicity emerged, a concept that acknowledged the profound interplay between the individual psyche and the seemingly objective world. He saw that our inner dramas, our unresolved conflicts, our deepest aspirations could, and often did, manifest externally through these meaningful coincidences, as if the universe itself was participating in our journey of self-discovery, our individuation. Now let's address the elephant in the room. The science in synchronicity explained. Carl Jung's science of meaningful coincidences. This is where many self-proclaimed rationalists scoff. And let's be brutally honest, Jung's concept of synchronicity doesn't fit neatly into the conventional, materialistic, cause-and-effect paradigm of classical science. If you're looking for a double-blind, peer-reviewed study that proves synchronicity in a lab like you'd prove gravity, you'll be disappointed. Jung himself wrestled with this. He called it an empirical concept, meaning it was based on observation, on lived experience, rather than a priori theory. He meticulously documented numerous instances in his patients' lives and his own. His science was more akin to the observational sciences like ethology or certain branches of psychology, where patterns are observed and their significance inferred, rather than experiments conducted in a controlled vacuum. He collaborated with the physicist Wolfgang Pauli, a Nobel laureate, exploring potential parallels between synchronicity and the then-emerging field of quantum physics, particularly concepts like entanglement and the observer effect, where the act of observation influences reality. However, these connections remain speculative and are often oversimplified or misused by New Age enthusiasts. The true science of synchronicity, as Jung proposed it, is the rigorous observation of the interplay between the objective and subjective. It's about being an honest scientist of your own experience, meticulously noting these occurrences and their context without jumping to fantastical conclusions, but also without dismissing them as mere chance when their meaningfulness is too profound to ignore. It demands intellectual honesty, the honesty to admit that our current scientific models may not encompass all of reality, especially the reality of subjective meaning. It's a call to expand our definition of what constitutes valid inquiry, particularly when dealing with the human psyche and its place in the cosmos. The absolute core of synchronicity lies in the word meaningful. A coincidence is just two things happening at once. A meaningful coincidence is when those two things resonate with a significance that shakes you, that speaks to a deeper layer of your being. But who assigns this meaning? You do. The psyche of the observer is paramount. The same set of events could happen to two different people. For one, it's a random Tuesday. For the other, it's a life-altering synchronicity. This subjectivity is often used to dismiss the concept, but that's a superficial critique. Meaning itself is inherently subjective, yet it's the driving force of human existence. Your life goals, your values, your love for another person, these are all imbued with subjective meaning, yet they are undeniably real and powerful. Synchronicity taps into this deep human need for meaning, suggesting that the universe is not a cold, indifferent machine, but a field of potential meaning that interacts with our consciousness. The meaning often arises from a connection to an activated archetype from the collective unconscious, or it relates directly to a critical psychological process the individual is undergoing, a major life decision, a period of intense crisis, or a breakthrough in self-understanding. The event isn't just peculiar, it lands with a numinous, almost sacred quality. It feels sent. This isn't about imposing meaning where there is none. It's about recognizing a resonance that is already there, waiting for your awareness to meet it. It's the difference between seeing a random arrangement of stars and recognizing a constellation that has guided travelers for millennia. The stars are the same. The recognition of the pattern and its significance changes everything. Herein lies a crucial, brutally honest truth. You must develop the fierce discernment to distinguish genuine synchronicity from apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful patterns in random noise, or simple confirmation bias, where you only notice things that confirm what you already believe or want to be true. The human mind is a pattern-making machine, and sometimes it goes into overdrive. If you're desperately seeking signs, you'll find them everywhere, and most will be meaningless projections of your own anxieties or desires. This is where intellectual rigor and radical self-honesty are non-negotiable. Jungian synchronicity is not a license for delusion. It's not about seeing Jesus in your toast every morning. A true synchronistic event typically possesses several characteristics. It's highly improbable. It carries a strong emotional charge, often a surprise or a sense of the uncanny, and it provides a clear, often symbolic, insight or affirmation related to a significant aspect of your inner life or current situation. It doesn't just confirm a trivial thought. It often shatters your current perspective or opens up a new, unexpected path. You must cultivate the mental toughness to question your interpretations, to ask, is this truly significant, or am I forcing the meaning? Is this guiding me towards growth and individuation, or is it leading me down a rabbit hole of self-deception? Without this critical faculty, the profound tool of synchronicity becomes a plaything for the ego, a way to feel special rather than a way to become whole. True strength lies in this discernment. So, what are the conditions that seem to invite or highlight synchronistic events? Jung observed that they often cluster around times of significant psychological transformation, crisis, or when an individual is deeply engaged with the contents of their unconscious, perhaps through dreamwork, active imagination, or intense creative endeavor. When the conscious mind is grappling with a problem it cannot solve, or when an archetype from the collective unconscious is constellated, meaning it's become energetically charged and active in the individual's psyche, the stage is set. It's as if the psyche, in its attempt to achieve balance or move towards wholeness, the process of individuation, sends out a kind of signal, and the outer world, in ways we don't fully understand, reflects or responds to that signal. Heightened emotional states also seem to play a role. Intense need, deep love, profound grief, or even great creative passion can act as catalysts. It's as if these emotions create a certain psychic field or tension that makes such meaningful alignments more probable. Furthermore, the numinous quality Jung spoke of is key. These events often feel sacred, uncanny, or imbued with a sense of destiny. They carry an energetic signature that distinguishes them from mundane occurrences. It's not just what happens, but how it feels and the specific symbolic meaning it carries for your unique journey at that precise moment. The unconscious mind, that vast, largely unexplored territory within you, is the primary source. It communicates in symbols, in images, in archetypal dramas, and synchronicity is one of its most potent languages for speaking to the conscious ego, bridging the inner and outer. Let's consider some examples, not as definitive proof, but as illustrations of the kinds of patterns Jung was describing. One of Jung's most famous examples involved a patient who was recounting a dream about a golden scarab. As she was telling him the dream, a beetle very similar to a golden scarab tapped against the window of Jung's consulting room. Jung caught it and presented it to her, saying, "Here is your scarab." For this patient, who is highly rational and resistant to deeper psychological exploration, this improbable event broke through her defenses and opened her up to the work they needed to do. The scarab, an ancient Egyptian symbol of rebirth and transformation, was precisely what her psychological situation required. Another common type involves encountering specific, unusual symbols or information repeatedly in a short period, just when you are grappling with a related issue. You might be struggling with a career decision, and suddenly you see articles, hear conversations, or encounter people all pointing towards a particular unexpected path. Or think of the library angel phenomenon, searching for a book on a specific, obscure topic, and the exact right one seemingly falls off the shelf into your hands. These aren't just lucky breaks. The meaning is tied to the internal state of the seeker. The key is the subjective significance and the acausal nature of the connection. For instance, you might be wrestling with a deep sense of betrayal, and you randomly open a history book to a story of a famous betrayal that perfectly mirrors your emotional landscape, offering not a solution but a profound sense of recognition and shared human experience, which itself can be healing. The power is not in the event itself, but in the resonant meaning it sparks within you, urging you towards awareness or action. What then is the ultimate purpose or function of these meaningful coincidences? Are they just cosmic curiosities, or do they serve a deeper evolutionary purpose for the individual? From a Jungian perspective, synchronicity serves several vital functions, all ultimately aimed at fostering what he called individuation, the lifelong psychological process of becoming an individual, a separate, indivisible unity or whole. This is the journey of integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of your personality, realizing your unique potential, and becoming the person you were truly meant to be. Synchronistic events often act as guideposts on this journey. They can provide crucial affirmation when you're on the right path, even if that path is unconventional or difficult. They can offer warnings or course corrections when you're straying into unproductive or self-destructive territory. They serve to break down your rigid, ego-bound view of reality, forcing you to acknowledge forces and connections beyond your immediate comprehension and control. This shattering of a limited worldview is essential for growth. It destroys the weakness of a small, isolated self. By demonstrating a meaningful connection between your inner state and the outer world, synchronicity expands your consciousness. It helps you realize you are not an isolated monad in a random universe, but part of a larger, interconnected web of meaning. This realization can be incredibly empowering, fostering a sense of belonging and purpose that is often eroded by the alienating aspects of modern life. They can act as catalysts, shocking you out of complacency and into a more engaged, authentic way of living. In essence, synchronicity is one of the ways the self, Jung's term for the archetype of wholeness, the regulating center of the psyche, communicates with the ego, guiding it towards greater integration and a more meaningful existence. It's the universe collaborating in your personal evolution. So how can you cultivate a greater awareness of synchronicity in your own life? This isn't about making synchronicities happen. They are, by definition, acausal and often spontaneous. Rather, it's about creating the inner conditions that allow you to recognize and understand them when they do occur. First, you must pay attention to your inner world. This is non-negotiable. Keep a dream journal. Dreams are a primary language of the unconscious, rich in symbols and archetypal themes that often precede or parallel synchronistic events. Practice active imagination, a Jungian technique of dialoguing with figures from your unconscious. The more familiar you become with your own inner landscape, the the more likely you are to recognize its reflections in the outer world. Journaling your daily experiences, especially unusual coincidences or moments that feel significant, is also crucial. Note not just the event, but your emotional state, your thoughts at the time, and any symbolic connections you perceive. Over time, patterns may emerge that would otherwise go unnoticed. Cultivate an attitude of openness and curiosity, rather than rigid skepticism or naive credulity. Approach these experiences with a beginner's mind, willing to be surprised, willing to entertain possibilities beyond your current understanding. Let go of the need for immediate, rational explanations for everything. Sometimes, the meaning of a synchronistic event only becomes clear much later in retrospect. And crucially, when a seemingly synchronistic event occurs that feels genuinely significant and points towards a constructive path, dare to act on it. Synchronicity often invites a response. It might be an inner shift in perspective, or it might be an outer action. Sitting back and merely collecting coincidences like curios is to miss the point. They are often prompts for growth, for change, for courage. The unstoppable mindset comes from learning to trust these deeper currents, to navigate by these subtle but powerful signals. However, alongside this openness, we must again emphasize the brutal honesty required to avoid the pitfalls. Misinterpreting synchronicity can be just as disempowering as ignoring it. Not every coincidence that makes you feel good is a divine green light. The ego is a cunning trickster. It loves to co-opt spiritual or psychological concepts to reinforce its own biases and desires. If you're looking for validation for a foolish decision, you might twist any random event into a sign. This is where the hard work of self-awareness comes in. You must constantly question your motives, your attachments, your shadow material, those parts of yourself you'd rather not acknowledge. Synchronicity is not a substitute for critical thinking or personal responsibility. It doesn't tell you what lottery numbers to pick, nor does it absolve you of the need to make difficult choices and do the hard work required to achieve your goals. It's a subtle force, a guiding influence, not a cosmic remote control for your life. Furthermore, becoming obsessed with looking for signs can lead to a state of hypervigilance and anxiety, where you lose your grounding in everyday reality. True synchronistic awareness is relaxed, receptive, and integrated into a balanced life. It's about recognizing the extraordinary within the ordinary, not escaping the ordinary in a constant search for the extraordinary. The greatest danger is self-deception. The discipline is to hold the experience, examine its symbolic content, consider its context in your life, and then, with as much honesty as you can muster, assess its true significance. Sometimes the most brutal truth a synchronicity reveals is one about your own self-deception, and that can be the most valuable insight of all. Consider the energy dynamics at play. Jung spoke of psychic energy or libido, though in a broader sense than Freud's purely sexual definition, as the fuel of the psyche. When this energy is blocked or fixated, it can lead to neurosis. But when it flows, when it's directed towards conscious engagement with the world and the unconscious, it can facilitate profound transformation. Synchronistic events often feel like a sudden surge or alignment of energy, an inner psychic charge meeting an external event that carries a similar energetic signature. It's as if, for a moment, the veil thins and you witness a direct correspondence between mind and matter, psyche and physis. This isn't energy mastery in the sense of some new age guru teaching you to manipulate invisible forces. It's more about becoming aware of the energetic currents within your own psyche and how they seem to interact with the larger field of reality. When you're deeply engaged in work that aligns with your core values, when you're pursuing your individuation with passion and integrity, your psychic energy is coherent and potent. It's in these states that synchronicity often becomes more pronounced, as if your focused intent and inner alignment create a resonance that draws forth corresponding outer experiences. Conversely, states of inner conflict, repression, or alienation can also constellate synchronicities, often of a more challenging or disruptive nature, signaling the need for urgent attention to these imbalances. This is not about positive thinking overriding reality. It's about the profound, observable connection between your inner energetic state and the nature of the reality you experience and attract. The unstoppable individual isn't one who avoids all difficulty, but one who understands how to work with these energetic and symbolic currents, transforming obstacles into opportunities for deeper self-understanding and more aligned action. Let's also touch upon how this understanding can dismantle patterns of negative thinking. So much of negative thinking stems from a feeling of powerlessness, of being a victim of random, hostile forces. The world feels chaotic, meaningless, and indifferent. Believing this often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. An understanding of synchronicity, even a cautious and critical one, introduces the possibility of an underlying order, a hidden intelligence, a potential for meaning even in apparent chaos. When you start to notice these meaningful alignments, however rare, it can chip away at the cynical, nihilistic worldview. It suggests that you are not alone in your struggles, that there is a larger pattern at play, and that your inner life has significance beyond the confines of your own skull. This doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy or that bad things won't happen. Stoicism teaches us to accept what we cannot control. Synchronicity adds another layer. Even within that which we cannot control, there may be a hidden meaning, a subtle guidance, an invitation to growth. Seeing a difficult event not just as a misfortune, but as potentially part of a larger, meaningful pattern that is trying to teach you something, can transform your response from despair to curiosity, from resignation to engagement. This shift in perspective is a powerful antidote to victimhood and a cornerstone of mental toughness. It allows you to mine even adversity for its hidden gold, for the archetypal lesson it contains. The path of individuation, which synchronicity so often illuminates, is not for the faint of heart. It demands courage, the courage to confront your shadow, to question your most cherished beliefs, to step into the unknown, to embrace your uniqueness even if it sets you apart. The brutal truths revealed by synchronicity are often uncomfortable. They might point out your laziness, your avoidance, your complicity in your own suffering. They might challenge your ego's grand plans and redirect you towards a path that is humbler but more authentic. For example, you might be desperately chasing a high-status career for external validation, and a series of uncanny coincidences keeps pointing you towards a completely different, less glamorous field that deeply resonates with your soul but terrifies your ego. Heeding that call requires destroying the weakness of needing external approval and building the strength to follow your own inner truth. This is where Jung's work becomes profoundly practical and transformative. It's not just intellectual curiosity. It's a roadmap for radical self-improvement, for forging an unstoppable spirit grounded in deep self-knowledge and alignment with the larger forces that shape our lives. The rules here are not imposed from without, but discovered from within, through honest observation and courageous engagement with what these meaningful coincidences reveal about your own unique path and purpose. Think about the implications for your relationships and your understanding of others. While Jung's synchronicity primarily focuses on the individual's experience, the principles of meaningful connection and archetypal patterns can extend to our interactions. Have you ever met someone and felt an instant, uncanny connection as if you've known them before, and then a series of improbable events unfolds, weaving your lives together in a significant way? This isn't necessarily fate in a deterministic sense, but it can be an expression of synchronicity, where two psyches, perhaps resonating with complementary archetypes or engaged in parallel individuation journeys, are drawn together in a meaningful pattern. Understanding the archetypal dimensions of relationships, the anima-animus projections, the shadow dynamics, can provide a deeper lens through which to view your connections. When you understand your own inner landscape better, you project less onto others and you can engage with them more authentically. This authenticity, this alignment with your deeper self, is itself profoundly attractive, not in a superficial sense, but in a way that draws genuine, meaningful connections to you. You become a person of substance, someone whose inner and outer worlds are coherent. This coherence has a subtle but powerful magnetism. It's not about manipulative tactics, it's about the natural radiance of an individuating soul. The journey into understanding synchronicity is a journey into the mystery of consciousness itself. Jung, with his empirical yet open-minded approach, dared to suggest that psyche and matter are not two fundamentally separate things but are at some deeper level aspects of one and the same reality, the unus mundus, or one world, a concept from alchemy. Synchronicity in this view is a manifestation of this underlying unity, a momentary glimpse into the unified field where the inner and outer, the mental and physical, are seamlessly interwoven. This is a radical departure from the purely materialistic worldview that has dominated Western thought for centuries. It doesn't ask you to abandon reason, but to expand it, to acknowledge the limits of our current understanding, and to remain open to the evidence of your own experience when it points to something more. This is not about retreating into mysticism. It's about integrating the rational and the non-rational, the logical and the symbolic, to achieve a more complete and holistic understanding of ourselves and our place in the cosmos. The science here is the science of human experience in its fullest depth, a science that has the courage to explore the frontiers of meaning. Therefore, as you move forward from here, the invitation is not to become a passive sign seeker, but an active, discerning participant in the dialogue between your inner self and the outer world. The challenge is to cultivate the stillness to listen, the courage to see, and the wisdom to interpret. When those moments of profound, meaningful coincidence occur, and they will, don't just brush them aside. Don't immediately try to rationalize them away into insignificance. Pause, reflect. What was happening in your inner life at that moment? What deep questions were you wrestling with? What archetypal themes might be at play? What is the symbolic language of the event? What does it invite you to become, to do, to understand? This is the work. This is the path to leveraging these potent moments for genuine transformation. This is how you move from being a pawn of circumstance to a conscious collaborator with destiny. This is how you build an unshakable inner core, rooted in the understanding that you are part of something vast, intelligent, and profoundly meaningful. Synchronicity explained. Carl Jung's science of meaningful coincidences is not just a theory, it's an operational key to unlocking a deeper dimension of your existence. So the next time the universe winks, the next time the improbable alignment snaps into place with a jolt of recognition, you'll be ready. You'll understand that it's not just a random blip in the matrix. It's a message, a clue, a piece of the puzzle of your own unfolding story. The brutal truth is that most people will go through their entire lives oblivious to these signals, caught in the shallows of materialistic explanations, too afraid or too conditioned to look deeper. But you are not most people. You are here because you are seeking more, because you suspect there is more. Carl Jung provided a framework, a language for understanding these profound experiences. He showed us that these meaningful coincidences are not aberrations, but expressions of a fundamental principle of reality, an acausal connecting principle that weaves together psyche and world. Your task now is to become a conscious observer of this principle in your own life, to cultivate the inner quiet to hear the whispers, the discernment to understand their meaning, and the courage to act on the insights they provide. This is not about passive belief. It's about active engagement, rigorous self-reflection, and a commitment to your own individuation. Embrace the mystery, but do so with intelligence and integrity. Let the understanding of synchronicity empower you to destroy the weakness of feeling disconnected and purposeless. Let it fuel your journey towards becoming an unstoppable force for your own authentic becoming. The universe is speaking. Learn its language. The meaningful coincidences are there. Open your eyes, open your mind, open your soul, and dare to see the profound, ordering intelligence that underpins the very fabric of your life. The science of meaningful coincidences is ultimately the science of you in profound dialogue with everything. Start listening, start living it.